So it's a great pleasure to welcome Emma, who's currently in Cyprus, or to use her Tibetan name, Annie Pema Deki.
That's correct. Yeah, Pema Deki. Yeah.
Yes. Interesting. You went from Emma to Pema.
Yeah, which was an accident because the Rinpoche Geshe in Rabgay who named me didn't know actually that my name was Emma, because so he just chose Pema, not knowing that my name was Emma. So it's my Lama finds this absolutely hilarious.
It is amusing. Now, I'm sure Emma's going to tell you her story, but just quickly, Emma was a high flyer in the world of finance who, after a truly terrifying event, was set on a path that led her down many alleys, but eventually saw her becoming a Tibetan nun. Her story takes us from the world of high finance in the UK and Asia to the Himalayas, particularly the Kingdom of Bhutan, where she found her teacher, becoming the first Western woman to ordain in that country. She, with the blessing of her Lama, she has written her story in her book Set Free, and has also founded a charity, Opening Your Heart to Bhutan. Thank you so much, Emma, for joining us. And look, just reading your booklet, your life has so many dimensions. Cambridge University, successful international business career, art school, relationships, yoga, motherhood. And you found success in many of these, but you kept looking for something else. I guess you gained something from each of these steps, but what was pushing you forward?
Oh gosh, that's quite a question, isn't it? I think there's two ways you can look at that question. I'm sure many people also feel an inherent interest in the Buddhist path, like something deep in them was interested in the Buddhist path, you know. And I think even as a young child, I was very drawn to pictures of Buddhas and statues, etc., etc. And you know, so I think on some level, there's some deep part of me which was always interested in finding this path. But I think it was, you know, being held at, as you know, at gunpoint, you know, hostage situations. You know, at that point, it jolts you into, hold on a sec, stop sleeping around here.
Yeah, and, I guess that was a defining moment, Emma, that you had that traumatic experience.
So I think after that, you gain a lot of courage. You kind of stop clinging to a lot of things. And when you stop clinging, actually, you have this amazing courage somehow arises, right? And so I think that, I don't know if I knew what I was looking for, really, but I just felt quite open to finding out what was there for me, what was the path I was supposed to go down. And so, but I don't know how much it was really consciously looking for something. When I first went to Bhutan in 2011, and I happened very luckily to meet the person that was going to be my teacher. I didn't think I was looking for a teacher, but that's just what arose, you know.
And I was reading about your experience in Jakarta, and you say it made me realize how precious life itself was, and that you can't waste it.
Yeah, I mean it did, and that sounds very nice, but actually the feeling of preciousness actually come from quite a feeling of despair, because you know, when Jakarta happened, I was still relatively young. And I felt very much like, oh, I'm about to die and I've done nothing. And I felt very, very powerfully that I had not given anything to this world. I had not kind of opened my heart and done something kind and loving in this world. I just felt that very keenly. And so there was just this sense that it's not that I'd wasted my time, but I was like, if I go now, I've given nothing. I've left nothing good behind. I mean, maybe a few friendships or, you know, I don't know what, but nothing of any value. And I think so, although, yes, it was a realization of the preciousness of human life, it was also this sense that, yeah, I just hadn't contributed anything. And I realized that contributing something was obviously a very important thing.
Emma, for those who are online who perhaps haven't read your book, perhaps you could explain what happened to you in Jakarta.
Yeah, so I think it's especially for from a Buddhist point of view. So if you imagine that you have a sense of safety in the world, right? We have this sense of taking refuge in the world, in material things. So I was in a 5-star hotel in a beautiful room, and I'd been having business meetings in Jakarta. So I had all the trappings of safety, you know, nice clothes and shoes and et cetera, et cetera. And my door, somebody knocked on my hotel door, and I opened the hotel door, and the man was there with the gun and pointed the gun into my chest and then pushed me back into the room, and the door closed behind me. And so there I find myself in this very luxurious place of safety in absolute terror, you know, which is kind of a strange combination. And I think something about that is what gave me the courage to know, don't rely on these things that look safe, you know, don't rely on these kind of outer conditions for your safety. It's not a place to take refuge, actually.
And how did you escape that situation?
Oh, yeah. So I took a chance because at a certain moment we had to open the door of the room. And when I opened the door of the room, and he was standing behind me with the gun in my back, and I opened the door of the hotel room, and as I stood there, my peripheral vision could see many army people and police people with guns lined up along the walls. And I thought, actually, I didn't even think, to be honest. I just realized that I had a chance to run. And so even without consciously thinking of it, I just decided to run. And I mean, I imagined I was going to die, because I imagined that he would shoot me in the back as I ran, but he didn't. And so I managed to escape like that. And actually afterwards, I had to see like people from kind of like the SAS, or I don't know what it was. And they told me off. They said, if you're ever in a situation like that again, don't do that, because that's very, very dangerous. But I think, yeah, don't run, you know. And I was like, yeah, but I couldn't stay there, because when you've been trapped in a room with somebody with a gun, you feel so trapped. There's no exit for you, right? There's no way to get out of there. So when the door opened, I was just like, I'm going to run.
So Emma, it was a receptionist who realized you were in trouble, that the army suddenly appeared?
Yeah, apparently, I don't remember this, but apparently I must have screamed when he first entered the room. And so somebody had heard the screams. I mean, I don't remember screaming. And then eventually there was some kind of process of people finding out, you know. So very strange situation.
And after that, you decided to leave your career in Hong Kong. Have I got that right? And you went back to England. And if I've got the sequence right, you then studied art. Is that how?
No, I think so. First of all, I had to recover from the impact of this experience, which was quite great.
Yeah.
Because you can imagine we are taught to trust things. We are taught to trust nice places and, you know, et cetera, et cetera. And my trust in the world had been very broken. So I had to recover from that. And then after that, I decided to leave my career. And then I just started to study yoga, and started to study meditation, and with very, very many teachers. And that was really the start of the path that really eventually led me to Bhutan and everything that happened since. But I didn't go from hostage situation into a spiritual path. There was definitely this transition period where I had to recognize how traumatic that experience had been, and I did need to, kind of in the upper layers of my mind, I did need to heal from that. So I would emphasize that, because if somebody's been through something which is very shattering like that, I think they may well need, like I did, to give themselves time and get the help of others to know how to digest an experience which feels beyond something you can digest. It feels so huge and so shocking. So you have to know how to bring that into your awareness and then move on. So I did have that transition stage.
Emma, did you get any professional help apart from working into yoga, with yoga?
Yes, no, I did. Yeah, I worked with people who had helped the other hostage takers that had been in the Middle East, like Terry Waite and people like that. And so that was very useful, because the conceptual mind, it can't digest something so shocking. It's just, you just don't know how to digest it. And so you constantly want to push it away or pretend it didn't happen. And then it comes back like some kind of undigested egg sandwich, and so you can, the profoundest human experiences, I think, especially when they shatter us in that way, we cannot comprehend them on the conceptual mind.
I was interested in your approach to yoga, and eventually you became a yoga teacher. But for you, you were going beyond the physical movement, although you found this very helpful, to yoga concepts like ahimsa and pratyahara.
Yes,
perhaps you can say a little about those.
Well, I don't know if you've done yoga, Helen, and other people here have done yoga, but it's the most wonderful thing. It's just the most wonderful thing. I mean, it's a science of how to take care of the whole being and develop them forward. So it covers our values, our attitudes in the world, and as you say, the first starting point is ahimsa, not to cause harm to other beings. And as Buddhists, obviously, we can recognize that's also the foundation of Buddhist principles, isn't it? And then it's quite very logical yoga. It says, okay, you have a human body. How can we get this human body to be both relaxed but energetic? Then you have a breathing system. How can we get that to function well? And then how do we train your mind eventually to let your innate kindness and wisdom come up? And so it's just so clever like that way, and so I studied it for many, many years. And of course, from a Theravadan point of view, we can see the yoga teachings and Theravadan teachings very similar. Yeah. Rightly or wrongly, then, people, you could maybe say, but we can debate this, you could maybe say that the Mahayana intention, the Bodhisattva intention, is possibly less explicit in the yoga teachings and also less explicit in Theravadan teachings, right? So, from a Theravadan point of view, we talk about solitary realizers, don't we? Listeners, hearers, and solitary realizers. And in many ways, the yogic path sometimes appears to me to be the path of a hearer or solitary realizer. So you can see a very close connection there, I think.
Yeah. Emma, what impressed me reading your book, whatever, whether you're doing yoga or as you developed in your Buddhist studies, you were always trying to develop kindness and compassion. That seemed to be a cornerstone through this, through this whole journey.
Yeah.
And where did that come from? Was that sparked by Jakarta or?
Yes, that was definitely sparked by Jakarta. And I have to say that I had no interest in being a kind person, really, growing up. So it's always very shocking to me that I have ended up really emphasizing this quality in the human. Because growing up, I really wasn't encouraged to think kindness, yeah, let's go for kindness. I was definitely encouraged to think of let's get good exams, let's get a good job, you know, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's nice to be kind, but it's not essential. It's not like an essential quality of a human. It's like an added extra. So first of all, I'm always really shocked because I spend half of my time teaching about compassion and teaching the compassion sadhana from Bhutan specifically. And I'm always like, slightly kind of like, how did I end up doing this? You know, but when there was a very pivotal moment after the event in Jakarta, where I was shown a photograph of my assailant, who was now, he had slid down the wall in the hotel, and he was obviously alive, but in a very bad way. And because of the army that had come in, etc. And this photograph, I don't know really what happened. I had this photograph like in my hand. It was one of those Polaroid photographs with the little white edges that we used to have. And I looked at this photograph and I just felt this unbearable sorrow for the situation.
For the attacker? For the attacker?
No, not necessarily for the attacker. For the attacker, for the situation, sort of for me, for the army, like for the whole landscape. It's hard to describe. It was just a landscape where there was sorrow and then there was compassion, and they were just absolutely indistinguishable. You know, the arising of sorrow and the arising of compassion, they just were simultaneous somehow. And it was just I've never had an experience like it. I don't know. It was a completely different perspective for a moment. And there was no need to be angry or to judge or to blame or to have any kind of narrative. There was just a feeling of this immense sorrow for this web of confusion that somehow had arisen. And all I felt was compassion. And believe me, I'm not a great person. This is not like something I normally feel. But at that moment, I just had a kind of this is a completely different perspective. And I was very surprised. I mean, well, you know, I was just very taken aback by it. But I think that really gave me the insight into thinking there's a way to be human which I had not seen before.
Because you would expect anger after a situation like that.
Yeah, anger or really the wish to blame. And I was just really amazed that wasn't there.
And in your book, you say you wondered what happened to your attacker.
Yeah, I think my attacker would have gone to an Indonesian jail. That's what the army said. And, you know, that's quite hard to come to terms with because obviously, although I was very affected by what happened, my life largely sort of carried on, and his life, I presume, would have come to quite a big emergency stop, and he would have gone to an Indonesian jail. And I don't think an Indonesian jail is probably a very nice experience.
Yeah.
So I definitely felt that his sorrow and his path from there was going to be a much more difficult one than mine.
Emma, you mentioned Bhutan, and that's where a vast majority of your spiritual path has happened. I was wondering why Bhutan, because my feeling here, it's a very difficult country to enter. So how did you organize that initially to get into Bhutan and then keep going back?
Yeah, I know. It's just kind of like too weird, isn't it? So Bhutan, yeah. So it's not that I chose Bhutan. It really isn't. And there would definitely have been easier places to choose. Yeah, so I don't recommend it really. But it was just that when I went to Bhutan in 2011, you know, I walked into this temple in Dochila about it's about 3,000 meters. It's quite high up and quite cold. And you know, I just walked into this temple, and there was a monk standing over there. And as I looked at him, he just appeared to have this very shining, like a moon disc around his head, right? And, you know, I was a bit sort of taken aback, like, you know, and I thought, oh, you know, I just felt very drawn to him. And so I went to talk to him. And as he began to talk to me, although his English was not great, there was something about hearing his voice that I just thought, oh, I could just listen to you forever. What's going on here? You know, and we sat down on the temple floor, and the other people that I was with, they were like, oh, Emma, she's talking to another monk. Oh, for goodness sake, let's just go off and see something else. We'll leave her here. You know, she's talking to another monk.
But Emma, how could you talk to him? He only spoke Tibetan, I understand.
Dzongkha. So the language of Bhutan is Dzongkha.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. So we have classical Tibetan for our prayers, but the everyday language of Bhutan is Dzongkha.
Yeah.
So it's based on the classical script of Tibetan, but its meaning is different. Pronunciation is pretty similar. Anyway, and I don't know. I mean, I don't know, but I said these words out loud to him. I said, I want to be a kind human being. And it was like sharing something very secret in my heart. And he was the one that I wanted to tell that wish to. And something about expressing that openly and saying that openly felt a little bit, not exactly like a commitment, but it did feel like something that I was saying, okay, this is a line in the sand now. I'm telling you now that I want to be a kind human being. And once I've said it out loud and I've said it to you, I can't pretend I didn't, you know, I can't pretend I didn't say that kind of thing. And
what was his response?
Oh, typical Lama. No real response, just no response. Just kind of like, you know, I mean, I don't know. He wouldn't have, I don't know. You know, I want to feel like he said, oh, good, but he didn't say, oh, good, because, you know, the Bhutanese way is very, not many words, you know, and, but so I sort of, anyway, I had to go because everybody else had left, and I suddenly realized, so I'd made this, you know, really a moment from my heart I'd shared with this monk in Bhutan, and everybody else had gone. I suddenly realized, you know, oh, I need to go and find the other people I'm with, you know. So I sort of stumbled out of this temple thinking, what just happened, you know? And then obviously, yeah, anyway, so then I went back to England. But the feeling of this person's voice, they just don't know what it had done. And I thought, I have to go back to Bhutan. I have to go and find this monk again. Whether he remembers me or not, I don't know, but I felt like it's unfinished business, you know?
And you did?
So I went back to Bhutan, and then we went to Dochla to find him, and he wasn't there. He wasn't there. So I traveled back to Bhutan to find him, and he wasn't there. And I can remember walking to this temple and thinking, well, that's not him. You know, what are you doing in here? That's not him, because you imagine that it's going to be exactly the same as you left it. And of course it isn't. Everything's moved on. Anyway, through a very lucky coincidence, we managed to talk to him on the phone, and he remembered me, and he said, yes, I'll come and meet you on the 31st of December, 2011. I will come and meet you. And so I had this very strange New Year's Eve with the Bhutanese Lama. And then the next morning, he said, okay, I'll see you at 5 o'clock in the shrine room. So we gathered in the shrine room at 5 o'clock in the morning on the first day of that year. And then he taught me about the compassion sadhana. And then he, at the end of it, he said, oh, you're going to need these, he said. And he took his prayer beads from his wrist and gave them to me. So these are these very prayer beads here. And, you know, I think that was just one of those moments where you're just kind of like, okay, you know, this is my teacher. I'm clearly his student. And now we go forward. And then that was it. You know, then from there, he was my teacher for a long time. And then he said, no, I can't teach you anymore now. You need to go to one of his teachers. So now I'm no longer taught by him, which was actually really made me very sad, because I thought, this is my teacher. He'll be my teacher for all of my life. It never occurred to me that he wouldn't be my teacher after a while. That was actually really hard for me.
Yeah.
So now I'm taught by His Holiness the Dorje Loken of Bhutan. In terms of studying back and forth from Bhutan and entering a monastic way within Bhutan, yeah, very difficult country to do that in. But it just seems to be my karma that is my place. And so that's how I continue. But, you know, quite magical at points, but also quite tough at points. You know, Bhutan is a very specific culture, 700,000 people. It's a Himalayan nation which has a very strong sense of its own identity. And so, yeah, it's definitely not been the simplest place to study in, I would say. Yeah.
Emma, it's also a country that I believes in gross national happiness. Is that really so?
Yeah. So I think, like for many of us as Buddhists, we hear the word Dharma, and you know, often people will say, "Well, is Buddhism a religion, or is it just a way of living?" And so Bhutan has developed this. It's from the fourth king of Bhutan, who is still alive. He developed this idea of gross national happiness as a way to create everyday structures based on Buddhist principles. You know, so there are various pillars, and it's really a way to ensure that as a country develops, it keeps in mind its ecology, its culture, and as well as economic development, it brings in other aspects of development. And I think it's a brilliant idea. And it definitely has an influence on how Bhutan develops. But it's definitely got aspects of it which are probably useful for any country or any Buddhist to consider, you know.
And one thing that becomes very clear in your book is the incredible commitment you had to make to your Tibetan practice, hours and hours a day. But at the same time, you had become a mother, and not only a mother, but a single mother, living this. You weren't in a center with other nuns, you were living independently, which I think makes it incredibly difficult. So how did you do it?
Thank you. Thank you for understanding that, because I really appreciate those words, you know, because in fact, you know, Lama told me to become a nun, right? It was not my idea. And I was very surprised that he told me that. And I felt quite embarrassed, actually, that he had told me to become a nun, and my son at that point was 5 years old. And I felt very embarrassed, like slightly dirty of the fact that I'd had a child, right? And I thought, how am I going to...
They didn't go together, being a nun.
How am I going to do this? And I felt very... Although Rinpoches and High Lamas in Bhutan, they may well have children, right? But they're not really looking after them. That's left with the mother, right? Whereas, you know, the child was very much my responsibility that I had. I felt, Helen, I felt very embarrassed about it when it's like, you know, like pretending, no, I'm not doing this as well. But actually, I have had to do all of that. And I mean, there's been many challenges in that. But so we could have a very long conversation about that. And sometimes I don't know how I've done it. And many people say to me, wow, you're very determined. And I just think I've been very determined. But, you know, and I can remember, I don't know if the people on the webinar that have had children, you know, having children is this massive event, and they will press every button and they will bring out so many karmic things, right? And I can remember at one point, you know, my son being quite challenging, etc., and saying to Lama, how do you understand patience? You know, we talk about patience in these texts of ours. How do you understand patience? Because I thought, you know, there's no, for me anyway, and I don't know how this sounds to you, but nothing tests your patience as much as a child. I couldn't imagine any monk understanding patience, you know. And he said, oh, you know, sitting for hours and hours doing prayers in the temple early in the morning. And I thought, forget it. It doesn't cut it. You have no idea. You know, you have no idea what patience is. The mother understands patience, you know. And so you know, so in many ways, you know, this role of the mother, which is, you know, so spoken of in texts, etc. I think if you can combine a profound spiritual path with actually physically caring for another human being to such a huge degree, it's a great thing. But it hasn't been easy. But he's much older now. Oscar's much older now, and so I think it's becoming easier to do. But yeah, I just take my hat off to anybody who is both raising children and committing to a spiritual path, because you've got to be in the world, you know, doing stuff and making fish fingers and turning up at, you know, parents' meetings, and you're trying to really live well and allow your Buddha nature to flourish. It's not.
But Emma, you weren't just doing, like maybe some of us do, an hour's meditation a day and perhaps listening to a Dharma talk. You were doing 6 or 8 hours a day of chanting and prostrations. I don't understand the full Tibetan practice, but it was certainly full on. So how did you, and at the same time you had to earn a living, so you were being a yoga teacher.
No, I didn't really earn a living at that point, actually, to be honest. I pretty much did practice, you know, 8 hours a day, and then looked after Oscar around that time. I couldn't really earn a living, and it wouldn't have been possible at that time to earn a living and do that amount of practice. There just wouldn't have been enough hours in the day.
Yeah,
you know?
I couldn't see how you did it. But
no, it wouldn't have been possible. Yeah. But at first I used to get up at 4 a.m. to do my prostrations, you know. And then Oscar started to think, oh, I want to get up at 4 a.m. to join in with whatever my mum is doing, right? At that point, I was like, no. So then I started later in the day. But yeah, in the Himalayan way of training, the good thing is that it's a very set out what to do, you know, which is great, because many people, they want to walk a path, but they're not quite sure how to do it. And they read that book and this book, and they pick up that practice and that practice. So it's called the Nungro, which is preliminary practice before Mahamuja Chatuchempo. And you do 110,000 prostrations, 110,000 Vajrasattva, 110,000 mandalas, 110,000 Guru Yoga. And you have to accumulate those on a daily basis. So you can't, like the moon.
Skip a day. You can't skip a day.
Yeah, the moon mustn't come up in the sky and you haven't done some practice, right? So when you start on that, it's a serious undertaking, and you've got to realize this is a serious undertaking now. And so that's what I was doing. And I don't know how I did it. You know, you look back and you think, how did I do that? But I think I just was very determined. And yeah, I was just very determined. And Lama had given me these instructions and I was not going to let him down. And I just lived a completely different life from the people around me, you know.
Yeah, amazing. I'll just remind everyone on the webinar, if you'd like to ask questions, just please pop them in the chat room. We're very open to them. During that time, writing about that time, there's a phrase you used which I really liked. You said you were rewiring the neural networks of the brain, which I think is astonishing.
Well, I mean, that's the idea. We talk about this now with neuroscience and neuroplasticity, don't we? Which just really agrees with what the Buddha said, you know, what you think you will, you know, that's the reality. That's what you will become and that's what you'll experience. So the Nungjo with these 4 different sets of practices is just like a big rewiring. And the repetition required is because, as neuroscience tells us now, you have to lay down these neural pathways and they have to be really laid down like a river, you know, eroding its valley. You know, they have to be very powerful in the end. And so that's the reason why there's so many repetitions, which, you know, just like any habit, you know, there's this power of habit. I know we think it's a very destructive thing, often in texts, you know, where the Bodhisattva or something, if you remember, talks about, you know, what habit, once it's there, once it's established, is very hard to break. On the other hand, if you deliberately cultivate a positive habit, it becomes very powerful and also very hard to break. And so it's just the same theory, you know.
Yeah. And then after you finished all that practice, you had, as you briefly mentioned before, you had a full ordination as a nun, which, you know, you lost your hair. And it's a lovely chapter because your son Oscar went with you to Bhutan for that ordination. And something you said I thought was amazing. You said the happiness of it was beyond any letters I can put together when you finally received that ordination.
I didn't talk about it too much in the book because it felt very sacred. And you know, even I mean, I don't think about this often actually, Helen, so you've really brought the memory of the feeling of it back to me now. You know, I just felt so light and strong afterwards, like I could just jump and fly in the sky or something. I mean, it was an extraordinary feeling because you connect so profoundly with the person who's giving you your vows, who is actually my teacher now, His Holiness the Bhutan. And the way the ceremony is, you connect very profoundly with them. And so it's like tapping into a big electrical, you know, hardwiring thing, or what do you call those? Just like a electrical power station. You know, if you imagine you're just one little bulb and then you get plugged into the whole electrical power station. It's like that, right? And then so afterwards you feel this kind of like, whew. And but it was also quite terrifying because we hadn't done any kind of rehearsal or any kind of, you know, really obvious preparation for it. So, you know, Dujlipin just spoke the words in Tibetan, right? And I had to repeat many of them just by hearing them. And that was really hard because in the West, we like to have things written down.
Yes,
you know,
like know what you were saying.
I could read it, but I just had to do it through my ear.
Yeah,
and that was really hard.
Yeah.
So, but no, I mean, it was a very amazing day. And then we went down onto the riverbank in Punakha, and we built a little stone stupas and this kind of thing. And I can just remember feeling so light doing these things. And yeah, it was just extraordinary. And Oscar stayed, he couldn't come into the ceremony itself, but he stayed down the corridor with some other monks, and they just took care with him, because the ceremony went on for quite a long time, actually, to be honest.
Yeah.
You know, it was not like a 5-minute thing, you know. So yeah, very amazing. So yes, there we go. Yeah.
So I'll get on to questions in a moment, and I'd also like to talk about your charity. But after all that amazing experience, you go back to live in small town England. I think I've got that right. So and you lived on your own. How did people, you know, the other mothers, how did people in the town respond to you being...
You know, I don't know, really, to be honest. I wasn't too worried about how they were going to respond, because what are you going to do, you know? So I just carried on and just, yeah, I just carried on. I guess there is a difference in the sense that you're not going to be doing the kind of like coffee mornings with other mothers. The community, you're not really going to be so part of that kind of thing, right? Because you're doing other things. But apart from that, it was kind of fun. And I mean, you know, and then the book came out, and then, you know, people started to want to talk to me quite a lot. And so I think people are like, you know, they're like, yeah, that's our nun, and you know, you know, and you know, people are quite kind of like, yeah. So they're quite happy about it. I didn't really think too much about them, in a sense. And you know, Lama said, I explained to Lama, I said, Lama, you need to understand, nobody where I live looks like this. Nobody, you know. And he just said, okay, but is it to their benefit to see somebody like you walking around? And I thought, yeah, I think it probably is. Just to remind people that they can consciously choose a really dedicated spiritual path. It's a possibility for all of us, you know. And so when I thought of it like that, then it helped me, you know.
And I loved what your son said, that you were the happiest mum at school pickup.
Yeah. I mean, my son has, obviously he was very accepting in the beginning. He was kind of very proud of me. Then in the early teenage years, he was really embarrassed about me. And I had to like walk 2 feet behind, you know, like following up behind a master, you know. You know, he's like, don't stand with me. Don't stand with me. You know, you walk, don't stand with me. Now it's kind of come full circle, because his friends think it's really cool that his mum is like this. So now I'm back all right. But I think he has had different responses at different times to what our situation is compared to other people. I mean, I remember there was a very kind of, you know, sort of like this very sad moment when he was about 12 or 13, where he just said, you're never going to have a handbag like the other mums, are you? You know, I was like, no, Oscar, I am never going to have a handbag like the other mums, you know. So, you know, because I think sometimes maybe, you know, maybe you think, some people might think, oh, it's a phase you're going through, you know, it's a phase you're going through. But actually then the phase has gone on year after year, and people have realized it's probably not a phase I'm going through, you know.
We have some questions and comments. The first one is from Venerable Zhuwei. I'm not sure I can read it all. It says, Venerable Zhuwei, you might not like to unmute yourself. It says, a Chinese character for patience or tolerance is the sharp blade of a knife on top of, and then I lose the message.
Yes, Helen. I was saying that, well, first of all, thank you very much, Venerable Pema, for such a delightful talk and such a frank conversation. Oh, this is wonderful. And thank you, Helen. Your questions are very good. So I was just commenting that in the Chinese language, we have a character for patience, sometimes called tolerance, where we have the blade, a sharp blade of the knife on top of our heart.
Heart. Okay.
The heart.
Oh.
And so when you mentioned what you went through and how you had to develop patience, I just thought of that character. Yes, indeed, it's very difficult. It's knife on top of the heart.
Oh, that's really interesting. You know, in Bhutan, when you have a newborn baby in Bhutan, yeah, and when they put them to sleep in their cot, they put a big knife above their head under the pillow, right? And I can remember being really concerned about this, you know what I mean? But for protection, you know, they put this really sharp knife above the head of the baby. So you're making me remember that. But yeah, so I don't know, that's just come to my mind there. But I don't know, the sharp blade of a knife on top of the heart. Yeah, I suppose it's helpful to have, you know, when we find these real challenges, I think it's so helpful, isn't it, as practitioners, either to know a phrase from a text or an image like that, just to help you kind of not get too involved with the story or the narrative or the whatever. You know, you can just see a situation as a situation of patience or whatever. You can remember an image like that, remember a line from Gampopa, and it just helps you carry on, doesn't it, to have that that kind of thing to turn to, you know. And how have you, as a venerable, how have you learned patience in your path?
The hard way. I live in a community, so
yeah,
you know, it's every day. I think every day we have to exercise patience.
Is it?
With everyone around us, we come from different cultural backgrounds, and very often, when we come together, it's like we'll have to get used to one another's habits. And to be able to live in a community harmoniously, we have to give in to one another. So we have to practice a little bit of non-self.
Yeah, okay. So So it's funny, isn't it? Because probably if somebody is on the call now who's maybe married, maybe they have a husband and children, they would probably say something quite similar. You know, we come together as a community, we have to practice patience, tolerance, and we have to maybe practice non-self. It's a similar thing, isn't it? I know we make a big difference between monastic living and non-monastic living, but actually those human qualities, we have to confront them, you know, maybe wherever we are.
Yes, probably, but the Sangha is bigger.
That's true. Yeah, that's
all dimensions.
Yeah, obviously that is very true, isn't it? And it moves as one, like a wave. When you're part of a Sangha, a group of venerables, you're like part of a wave moving across the courtyard, or, you know, that was always my feeling. Yeah.
Emma, next, Sharon's got a question actually about living in community. Sharon, do you want to ask the question?
Oh, I can see this is a really tricky question for me. Okay, Sharon.
Sorry. Yes, hi, Emma. I live close to Chinrezig Institute, so I see the nuns there living as a community and going to pujas and all that kind of stuff. So, and your book reflects that you live harmoniously in the community. So I was wondering, is that an option for you to ever go and live in a community? Because I think years and years ago, one of the lamas in the FPMT said to advise someone who wanted to become a Sangha member that they should, an ordained Sangha member, that they should actually live in a community because their sustainability as being ordained, you know, for the, you know, to keep being ordained, you know. So I guess what I'm saying is that it's harder living independently, which you seem quite comfortable with, really, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a big question, Sharon, and you know, it's a question that I think when I started on this path, I didn't really think about, right? I just didn't think about, you know. I was granted the opportunity to live in a monastic community in Bhutan, which is a very great honor. And because of COVID, my visa thing has run out now, but you know, otherwise. And so I have been granted that opportunity. And, you know, I was very happy there. So I'm very comfortable with monastic living, I can say. But in the end, Oscar asked me to return. And I had a very difficult moment of thinking, okay, do I stay here? Or do I return when he's asked me to return? And so I returned.
Yeah.
And I think that it was a very difficult moment, Sharon. And I think for the moment, I feel that if I can live, it's not an easy balance to make, but if I can live and make sure that he is okay and fulfill those responsibilities and help other beings and continue my spiritual path, then that's probably what's going to happen for a little bit longer at the moment. In terms of, in the end, if it was possible for me to live in the Buddhist university in Bhutan as a translator and assistant editor, because I do kind of some of that work for Bhutan right now, that would probably be the best place for me. The dilemma that I have as a woman who is born in the West is that I'm quite a strong character. I'm never going to be a Bhutanese nun. I'm far too
independent.
Yeah, I'm far too strong-minded for that, you know. And so I think that the perfect place for me would be in that way in Bhutan, and we'll see if that happens. If that doesn't happen, then I'll have to think again, I think. But it was a very difficult moment where I had to really think, like I heard the voice of my son saying, Mummy, can you come back? And then I returned from Bhutan at that point. But as Venerable has said, you know, in all of our circumstances, we have the opportunity to develop kindness. And in all of them, we have the opportunity not to develop kindness. So whatever those circumstances are. So I think, I mean, I definitely have a part of me, like definitely with founding the charity. And I'm, you know, I'm very, I think the charity is a good thing in the world. You know, I think it's done good things, and I think it's a good thing. So I suppose some part of me does like being quite active, you know, quite active. And that is a different thing than being in a monastic setting where your main role is to do your morning prayers and your study and your prayers, etc. It is a very different experience to be within a boundary wall practicing. It is a very different experience. And maybe I'm still a little bit active at this point in terms of, you know, wanting to do the charitable work to help others. And I think it would be harder to do that behind a wall. Yeah.
Sharon, does that answer your question?
I haven't really answered your question. I'm just giving you a flavor for all the things that are going on.
No, it's interesting because I can see, you know, the nuns in Chenrezig Institute, and they're quite happy up there, but, you know, they lead a sort of such a nice life, you know, they get nice meals and they've got good accommodation and, you know, so I was just wondering, you know, like, because you seem to be more in the world, you want to be in the world. That's my feeling about you, you know, that you're sort of the world, the world and of the world.
Yeah, I think, you know, I think maybe more, but I also think that it may look like nice rituals and nice meals, etc. But there's a lot that goes on, and there's you know, when you're in that community, and Venerable, I'm sure, would agree, you have to follow a very strict timetable on things. You don't have this choice about, oh, shall I get up now? Shall I not get up now? Shall I see this friend? Shall I not see this friend? You don't even have the choice of, okay, shall I, with the charity, shall I, put a water filter in the school, or shall I build a footpath over there? Because you're following a set structure. And that's a big thing. That's a big thing to get used to. So although it may look like some aspect of it's kind of nice, like simple, it's a very different mindset to be comfortable with, I think. Wouldn't you say, Venerable? Oh, I think you need to unmute yourself.
Yes. Hi. Yes, definitely. I think what appears, how like a swan on the a swan swimming on the lake. It looks like the swan is very gracious, but actually it's paddling very hard underneath the surface. It's the same. And it's like meditation too. It looks so simple, just to focus on the breath, isn't it? But behind that, the effort that's needed in order to keep that ritual.
Yeah. And, Sharon, you probably, I have an opportunity because I've, got many monastic colleagues and friends in Bhutan now. I think particularly Bhutanese monastics, it's such a beautiful country, and so many of the monastics look so sort of beautiful and serene, well, most venerables look serene, but, you couldn't dream they'd have any difficulty. And, I have a one that, Lopen, that I work with quite a lot on translating and stuff, and we can have quite open conversations, and I might say something like, oh, very difficult, trying to do this and that. And, he'll go, yeah, it's very difficult. And I'll go, how can it be difficult for you? You look like you're on a serene cloud floating through the sky. And they were, in a mindfulness way, like from the mindfulness teachings, it's just that kind of recognition. This is difficult. I mean, not a big drama around it, but it is difficult. But for a monastic to share that reality with a layperson would not be considered good. So you will not find monastics explaining to other people that there are hardships or difficult moments in what appears to be a very serene life. And because it wouldn't be, they would not see it necessarily, and Venerable may want to add in here, they would not see it as benefiting you, Sharon, to hear that they have difficult moments. They would see it as not helping you, disturbing your mind or putting doubt in your mind, right? So I think that monastics also have difficult moments, which they just recognize as difficult moments, but you just won't hear them a lot. Is that right, Venerable? Would you say that also?
Yes, that's definitely true, Venerable. We try not to. I think by the very term venerable, it means that we are to be respected, and we are supposed to be able to use the Dharma to solve our own internal problems, whether it's within the community or within ourselves. And this causes actually quite a fair bit of pain within individuals. Sometimes people may get desensitized from what may be going on in the institution that they don't consider to be fair and just, because we all come from different cultural backgrounds, and having to live together under the same roof, under the same routine is quite challenging for many people. But I guess what difference is that if once we have a common mission and a set of values to go by, we help one another. So the importance of being one another's spiritual friends, treasuring the fact that we can be together this lifetime, we've committed ourselves to the path, then we try to work at helping one another. I think that's what makes it different. Instead of saying that this is what I need, we try to look in terms of what is it that the other people may need.
yeah, that's that switch of perspective, you know, which is such a huge thing, isn't it? But I think you know, like in modern terms, you know, there are issues there about knowing as a monastic how to be skillful with your own mind and difficult moments. Like you say, you know, it's yeah, it's an interesting subject.
Yeah, Emma, we have a few more questions, and we also have a request to see your photos.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
So we are, I just want to say we're going over the hour, and please, if people have other commitments, we certainly understand if you need to drop off. But Scylla, what a great question. Would you like to ask Emma? You just have to unmute yourself.
Yeah, yeah. I just wanted to ask you, Emma, if you have had the feeling or the knowledge that you have reincarnated from a past life in Bhutan.
So I'm not sure, but my Lama had one vision, and which he didn't share with me. Of course, he didn't share with me. He shared with somebody else, who then shared it back to me, and where he did have some visions. So I believe that was why he was so certain to tell me to be become ordained, because he had had a vision of such a thing. So, but myself, I, you know, some extraordinary things have happened for sure, but I think I just feel in certain places in Bhutan, clearly something is very strongly there. And that's, you know, I can't really deny that. Like, even if I wanted to be sensible about it, when these things happen, you can't really deny them, actually. So something is definitely, you know, it's just, you know, I mean, it still seems bonkers, really, that I'm ordained in Bhutan, and it's when I'm born by the sea in Whitstable. It's just all a bit strange, isn't it? So, yeah, but, you know, whether one is reincarnated or not, the question is, what does one do with this current time, and is it to benefit to other people, isn't it? You know, these these nice mysterious things, still we have to recognize we're in samsara. Oh my goodness, we're in samsara, and we have to try so hard to be free of it, lifetime after lifetime, isn't it?
Judith has got a great question as well. Judith, if you'd like to ask Emma, or comment, really.
Yeah, it's a comment. Thank you, Emma.
Nice to see you.
I'm so impressed and amazed by the fact that you combined and balanced motherhood with your spiritual path. I'm also a mother, but obviously a lot older than you. I'm interested in this idea of a nun householder, and that in fact you can provide a great source of comfort, kindness, wisdom to people just by your presence, but also people seeing how you go about your life, and that you don't necessarily have to be in a monastery. In fact, I know a couple of Tibetan Buddhist Western women who are not living in monasteries. They're living like householders, not with a partner. And as I said in my comment, my first teacher was Ayya Khema, and she was never a monastic, and she could never have fitted into a monastery, but and she was brilliant, really. So there are many ways to follow that path, and I think it's terrific what you've done. And
thank you. I'm really
yes, but I will.
Oh, thank you. It's very nice to have that those words from you. I really, really appreciate it. You know, I really appreciate it. And you know, if you've been a mother yourself, then we know what that word means, don't we? It's not just a word, it's a actual, you know, many hurdles and moments and incredible things and many challenges, etc. I
used to have I still do have a saying, my practice is my relationship.
Yeah, I definitely, I mean, yeah, I guess like in Buddhist practice, you know, being a mother takes us to the heart of our commitment to this world somehow. So it's quite similar, it seems to me, to Buddhist practice. So yeah, but I guess it's just it's a great opportunity. We've been given both of these opportunities, haven't we? So I don't know this teacher. But
Kima was one of the first Theravada nuns in Australia.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know this teacher.
Well, she passed away 20 years ago, probably now.
Yeah. I
Um,
mean, the reality is, and probably why your words really are, I find so kind, you know, to hear. Is that when one of the most challenging aspects of being a monastic practitioner within more of a householder setting or ordinary setting, of course, is that you're very exposed. Like if you're in a monastery behind a wall, you're very hidden. So you can make your mistakes without anybody seeing. And when you're not behind a wall, you have to be extremely careful because you make your mistakes within the sight of other people. And that's an interesting dynamic.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think there's a very rich well there for you to tap. And please write more about that.
Something like that, you know, something like that. So my friends are just here. I hope I'm not sick. Do you need to go to the dentist? No, he's going to go. Sure. Oh, you're right. My friends that have just allowed me to stay in here, I know they had an appointment.
Does that mean you have to go?
No, I'm fine. They say it's absolutely fine. But I mean, I don't know. I think, Judith, you know, maybe this is why we need many lifetimes, you know, because I feel like, you know, I will always be Oscar's mother. I will always be that, isn't it? There won't be a time at which I say, oh no, okay, I've retired from this now. So whether I'm in a monastery in Bhutan or I'm in a monastery in the West or I'm not, I'll always be his mother. So whether I look like I'm juggling those roles in my heart, obviously it's always going to be like that, isn't it? But you know, I already feel as if I lived about 9 lives in this time. I think I just need to live about another 5 or something, then I can just do everything, you know. So yeah, we'll see. And it's really interesting because when I left Bhutan there to return to England, Ugen in Bhutan said, yes, well, it's just much better you're in the world. You know, you're doing all this good stuff and you're doing all these things. What's the point of all these rituals, he said. And I was like, what? You know, you're a Bhutanese person who really believes in all these rituals. What are you saying to me? I don't really understand it. Yeah, no, it's fine. And so I was really surprised by that. But I suppose, you know, from a Himalayan point of view, the greatest form of practice is seen to be in retreat. And whilst that is also ritualistic, it is to do the practices of you know, more advanced meditation to train the mind. And a lot of the time in, you know, behind the walls in a monastic setting, to do these rituals is all about cleaning the mind, purifying the mind, and preparing the mind for time in retreat. And that's the, you know, that's the you know, so ritual for ritual's sake. It's a funny thing, isn't it? You know.
Emma, just well, if you have time, we'd love to see some of your photos, and also also talk about opening your heart to Bhutan, your charity.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to ask Meg, you made a comment about an image, and I wasn't quite sure what you were referring to.
I was just referring to the Chinese character.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah. So I think your photos will actually show us a bit about your charity.
Okay, stay there. Let me just double check that I have this. I thought I had this set up. Stay there. So do you need to make me like a host or something?
I'm making
there
you
we go. Yeah, I think there's some. All right, so I just had a few photos here. Let me see, slideshow from beginning. Yeah, so can you see these now, Helen?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yes,
so first of all, if you are wondering from the book what my lama actually looked like, Lama Nima Sering, then here's my lama looking very young and sprightly.
What a smile. What a smile.
And we just, this is on one of my times in Bhutan. We're just outside a small hotel outside Thimphu where, I don't know, we were having a meeting or something. And it was a hotel where they had a very, very small earthquake one night that I was there, which was my first real earthquake. So that was exciting. Now this is me. This is the Jupakaju prayer book when I'm doing my Nungdro. So I don't know which practice I'm doing here, but this is in the Thimphu Valley in Bhutan. So the capital, they moved the capital from Punakha, which you'll see later, to Thimphu, which is closer to India. And Bhutan has this very strong relationship now to India. So this is Punakha, the original capital of Bhutan, and this is where I was ordained. So that experience of that very powerful experience happened in this zong. So like you may well have seen Potala Palace in Tibet, very similar structure here, the zongs in Bhutan. And the slightly sloping walls and the inner shrine tower here. And this little cantilever bridge, if you can see on the left-hand side here, cantilever bridge. And so Lama, myself and Oscar, we parked just behind these trees in order to enter the song. We went around here, and it was somewhere around here with the sound of the river in this room here, somewhere around here that I was actually ordained.
Wow.
And so Punakha is at about very much lower altitude. It's a sunny place, and so quite easy to be at compared to some other places in Bhutan. This is just a general photograph of Bhutan, really, with the Himalayas here. This is near Dochala, near Lama's place. And then this is one of my favorite photos of Bhutan. This is some footprints left in a place in Bhutan, because Bhutan has many footprints left all over the place, and this is just one of them that I quite like, so I like showing people that. This is in the south of Bhutan, this is the village that I founded my charity in. So if you've read the book, then Nakum and the school, this is the school here, and this is the kind of strange warm agricultural place in southern Bhutan where people live a fairly subsistence and quite tough life. So just to show a photo of that. And then, this is in the eastern part of Bhutan, meeting one child there. And this is a typical, in the back here, you'll see a typical farmhouse in Bhutan with wood and packed mud. I just put together a few images. This is some of our children that we help, the charity helps. This is the bus that we raised funds for in the background. And this is them getting them all new nice school chairs for their school. And you can see from the faces some of the different special needs that are present that we help with. So Yes. Let me see. Oh, this is with the, so this is the British Honorary Consul to Bhutan, Michael Rutland, and this was the Foreign Minister to Bhutan. This is when I received some award from the British Prime Minister, and I was freezing cold at this ceremony in Bhutan, so that's why I look really, really, really cold. Oh, that's the book that you've kindly mentioned today that raised so much money for the charity. That's been the main thing that's raised the money for the charity. Oh, and that's just the name of the charity. So not many pictures there, but some pictures. So just to give you a flavor. Yeah, and there we go.
Yeah, and can I recommend the book if you haven't read it? It's a very easy read, but there's a lot of wisdom in it. And
thank you.
Well done for that. And also, I've put in the chat room the link where people can donate to your charity.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. We have a lot of requests right now. In fact, I was, I had Ugan, the charity representative. We just have one employee for the charity. So it's really, really efficiently run, mega efficiently run.
Yes.
Because of, you know, myself and the people that support me in that. And we had this list came through from Bhutan, and I was like, oh my goodness, because we have raised some money over the last year, but not as much as we might have raised. And I was like, oh no. So because we are supporting a speech therapist in Bhutan, and very members of teaching support, and also food for 74 special needs children. And that to feed 74 children takes quite a lot of money, actually, as it turns out, and some teaching materials. And Ugan was giving me this list, and I was just kind of gulping as he gave me this list. I was like, oh, you've definitely given me a big project. I mean, I'm sure it'll be fine. We'll do it. But
and Emma, what can I just say? What really impressed me was that when these projects come up, you don't just say, okay, you scrutinize them and make sure they're viable in the same way as you used to scrutinize projects in the corporate world. So that training has actually become very useful. So
yeah, it has. And I have to, you know, I have to be skillful, and that means things I say no to.
Yeah.
And Ugan is always really surprised by that, because Ugan thinks if he makes a nice story about something, I'm going to say yes. And then I don't always say yes. So he's kind of knows that now, you know, but, so yeah, definitely if you, Helen, if you sat in a charity meeting with me, you're like, oh, shoot.
Yeah.
Because it's no good to, it's not responsible for me just to say yes to everything. I'm quite tough, and also, you know, I have to say things with the confidence that we can do them. It's no good saying yes and then not being able to do them, right? So you do need to be quite tougher than I may appear on the outside.
Yeah. But I think people need to know that, because so often, like, for example, with money we gave here to bushfire relief, some of it hasn't been spent. Communities are still struggling. Whereas when you hear about a charity that you know is being run with very little administration, then I think that gives you great confidence.
Yeah, and I think I'm just really, you know, I've worked personally, you know, obviously most of the fundraising comes from my activities, and I'm jolly well not going to give my time, and then for it to all be a bit sillily, messily not spent well. I mean, I just, you know, this is my hours of my life that I'm giving here, right?
Yeah.
I want it to be as effective as possible. And so, yeah, and no, it's amazing, because I mean, you start out, you know, you have a charity, you start out getting sleeping bags and maybe repairing a roof, and now we've built obviously most of a whole huge school. And you know, it's like if you keep going, you know, you have a good idea, you want to help, and then you keep going and you get people that are kind enough to support you, then it's amazing what you can achieve. But I know I saw the awful bushfires, and I saw, if you remember, Meg, when I came to Australia and had the opportunity to meet your wonderful koalas, right, which just absolutely, that was the highlight. And I saw many koalas had a very difficult time, didn't they? Many of them had a very difficult time with those fires, and I was so saddened to see that, you know. Yeah, so hopefully that won't happen again. Come and teach me, ask government to teach me how to give out money effectively. Well, the thing is, you've got to see the money as your you've got to take it very personally, the responsibility. You've really got to care as if it really is your money, you know, and you've got to be careful with it like you would be with your own savings or your own life, you know. You've really got to not see it as like somebody else's thing, you know. And I think that's where, because my my relationship with Bhutan is so close, that it just feels very close at hand, you know.
And Sharon has just put a lovely comment on the chat room that perhaps you should come and work for the Australian government and show them how to use money more efficiently.
Yeah, I mean, I know, because people say things like, and I'll tell you what's really interesting, Helen, I'll share something with you, right? So we are a UK registered charity, and that means we have trustees, we have a chairperson. None of these are paid, but, you know, and we have to register the charity commission, we have to have audited accounts, so we do all of that. And then and in some ways, and some people have said, are you going to register as a charity in Bhutan, which is a civil service organization? And so we looked at this, and love Bhutan as I do, and I do love Bhutan more than anything in the world. If you're going to register as a charity in Bhutan, it's a requirement to have an office and to have a minimum of 3 employees. And I was like, forget it. I'm not going to use money raised from the charity to get an office in Bhutan. I mean, forget it. I'm not doing it. And so, like, that idea was scrapped.
Yeah.
So we just have, you know, because it's all like that, to me, that's just like a waste of money to have a carpet or a front door and I don't know what. I was like, no, I'm not doing it like that. So, you know, but I'm lucky I can be like that. But I think the Australian government probably does need a building and a front door and a carpet, you know. How is Bhutan been affected by COVID? Well, what I'd say about that is, for much of Asia, and I'm sure you, and in fact for much of the world, the degree to which countries have been affected by COVID is only known if those countries have tested religiously, right? Otherwise, we don't really know the numbers, to be frank. In Bhutan, Bhutan has come out of the COVID situation extremely well in a way, because they closed the borders completely last March, and there was no debate on it. They just closed the borders, right? And so only Bhutanese nationals could return to Bhutan, and they had a 21-day quarantine period, and they were very firm about this. As a result, Bhutan has had 1 official death from COVID.
Wow.
Now, and Bhutan now has just started to open again. And if you wish to enter the country double vaccinated, you have a 14-day quarantine period, and a very, very strict 14-day quarantine period. So they are obviously taking it very cautiously, you know, and they have a small population. And let's remember that in normal times, they have an open border with India. And I'm sure you may have seen the terrible sights of what happened with COVID in India. So I think Bhutan was extremely cautious once it saw what's happening with India to, you know, really maintain that very firm borderline. So they've done pretty well. Everybody there over the age of 12 is double vaccinated. I think the take-up rate is like 99.9% or whatever. And no, they've done well. I mean, they have Thimphu, the capital, but Thimphu is nothing compared to the size of Melbourne, right? So in terms of that close community transmission, a country like Bhutan, where population density is less everybody together, will probably that's probably helped them in terms of not having so much community transmission. And so fingers crossed, and we just see as they begin to let more tourists in. But so if you want to go to Bhutan right now, you will have to have a 14-day quarantine period in the country, which may well put you off the idea, I suspect. It's putting me off the idea. So if it's putting me off the idea, I can't imagine what it's doing to other people.
We can't go anywhere yet, but hopefully the borders will open up soon. Are there any other questions? Or comments people would like to add? Or Emma, is there anything else you'd
No, I'm just, it's very lovely to have this chance to talk. So
and thank you. We've gone well over time.
Yeah. So thank you very much for all your understanding and your capacity to, be kind and generous with your comments and your views. I really appreciate it. It means a lot.
Well, thank you very much for your time. And it is, I recommend the book. It really is such an amazing story.
There it is. Yeah, I'm sure you can get it somehow in Australia. I'm not quite sure of the details.
Well, I'm sure you could get it from your website if it's not in your local bookshop. But just to close, just to urge everyone, if they can afford it, to make a donation to Emma's charity in Bhutan. Opening your heart to Bhutan.com/donate will take you there. And just to remind you that we will post a video of this webinar on our YouTube channel, possibly later in this week. And just very quickly, we've got some more events happening before the end of the year. Our next webinar will be on the 24th of November, if you want to put that in your diaries, with Achan Sujata, who's such a fantastic supporter of Buddhist women and ordaining, and his subject will be Believing Women. And then in December, mid-December, we're going to have a special screening of the film Bikini with the director, Melgo, will be in attendance, so you can ask her your questions after. And of course, from Boxing Day, there's the 3-day International Sakyadhita Conference, which will be on Zoom. It was initially supposed to be in Malaysia, so it will be in Malaysian time, which is good for us. And yes, we're lucky here. It's only about an hour's difference.
Yeah.
And the theme is Buddhist Women Beyond Boundaries, Interfaith, Interdependence and Environment. Registrations are open. The program looks good. So that should be something to look forward to, winding down after Christmas with that. So again, thank you very much, Emma.
No, it's my pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you all for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you again at any of these events. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Helen. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye, Emma.